Welcome back to How Soccer Explains Leadership. Thanks again for being a part of the conversation. Thank you for your download. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me, Phil Dark. I'm your host, and Paul Jobson, as we get to have another great conversation today. And again, we get to do it together. Hopefully, this will be the entirety of season 7. As you know from the last episode we talked about, we're now doing it every 2 weeks. So if last week you were wondering what the heck happened, how come my How Soccer Explains Leadership episode was not there? Well, that's because we are now going every 2 weeks to give you more time to digest this great content that we're able to have. And today we have no exception to that. But before we get to our guest, Paul, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well, Phil. We're enjoying our first spot of rain here in Waco, Texas in a while. We got to make up about 15 inches of rain at some point. Hopefully that doesn't all fall today. Otherwise we'll be flooded out. But enjoying some rain, winding down some sports in the Jobson house, starting up some new ones, winding down our last couple of weeks of Warrior Way here in Waco as well. Got a big end of the year fundraising event for Warrior Way Gives next week, finishing out the year, hopefully in a really positive way there to springboard into 2023, which is crazy, but all is well, man. How about how are things in Cali?
Yeah, going real well. Though before we recorded, I heard that you had the senior night last night with some of your former players, and that's pretty cool that you were able to see that out with some of those players. So how'd that feel, kind of being on the other side of it and still being super proud of your players and your family, and what'd that look like?
Totally. First of all, really weird being on the other side of the field,
I bet.
But really cool to be back at Betty Lou Mays Field at Baylor University, and just to be there to support my former players and what was their final game of the season, and especially those seniors. These seniors were, some of them are 5-6 year seniors because of COVID, but obviously how we manage our program, they're like family. So to be there to hug their necks one more time in a Baylor jersey was really special, and really a cool experience, and I'm really proud of them and the young women they are, and the things that they're going to go on to do are going to be pretty special. Once again, that seems to be the case with our Baylor team. Some really special young people, and just really proud of them. So a cool night for sure. A little bittersweet in moments, but reaffirming. I had my boys out there running around again, which was kind of cool to see them, and but a really cool experience. So yeah, pretty cool.
That was great. That's good. And I think the coaching staff had something to do with them being quality, great people too. So I appreciate you for that. Also, as for me, it's going well out here. It's Halloween week, so I'm doing my best Coach Beard impression with this big beard that I have. We're on video, but
I've been noticing your beard.
Yeah,
man. It's
it
pretty
just keeps
impressive.
growing.
I didn't know you could do that.
It's amazing what happens when you don't shave. And so that's going on right now. Just got back from Hawaii with my wife, which is pretty awesome. Getaway that we were able to do that. And my daughter's out there, so we were able to spend some good quality time with her. It's a 2-year delayed 20th anniversary trip that we had, 2020 anniversary. I think a lot of people were in that same boat. So it was a great time. It was definitely worth the wait. So that was good. All right. Well, that's enough from us, because we do have a great guest we're going to bring to you as we normally do. We have Tim Ryerson. He is the founder of Get on the Bus, which we are going to talk about later in this show. And it is such a cool thing. Definitely. You're definitely going to want to listen to that. Hear about that, maybe how you can bring it to your town, if it's not already there. If it is there, how you can get involved. He also started up a club out in Maryland, Ellicott City Soccer Club. He's the general manager and consultant at Ballistic United Soccer Club, which when I was a kid, that was like the only club we knew about in Northern California. As far as we knew, that was the only place they played soccer in Northern California, was wherever Ballistic was. And so that's something that's a little known fact. But if you were in SoCal, you know that fact. But we have Tim Ryerson. Tim, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm so excited. We got to get to know each other a little bit earlier this week, and I'm excited to kind of share what I learned and just the things that you're doing. And it's so cool. And the things that you're getting to do through a lot of other people around the country, and the partnerships that you have too, which is a big part of my heart, is collaborating. So I love how you're doing that too. But can you just do that for, as we usually like to just start this show, but briefly sharing your story, how you developed your passion for soccer and leadership, how you got to be where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks again for having me. It's great to be on. Listen to a few of your podcasts now, and I enjoy them. So thanks for putting out that content for folks like me. So basically, youngest of 5 student athletes, collegiate student athletes, and soccer was a big sport. Grew up in Maryland, had 3 older brothers that played, so we were always playing together. And basically, soccer has been it since as long as I can remember. If I knew I was going to be 6'5", I might have delved into other sports. I did play basketball a little bit, but couldn't shoot. So, but anyways, so soccer was our thing, and was very fortunate to grow up with brothers that played at a high level. So I was always looking up to them and trying to follow in their footsteps, so to speak. And so, yeah, I started playing at 4, and then next thing you know, fast forward, played youth soccer in Maryland. My dad had an opportunity to move to California my freshman year of high school, so I was able to play for a legendary coach in Northern California, and Hugh Kinnear. The Kinnear family is a big family in the soccer realms in Northern California, and so I was able to play for him. That sparked some more passion. Wanted to play in college. Wound up going to play at UNLV, and quite frankly, I wasn't good enough to play at UNLV. So I transferred, and I went to University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and it was a great fit for me. And I'll talk a little bit about that, I think, later in the interview. But so I played at UMBC, Division I school, had a great time, had a great coach. And then basically started working after college, and always was working during the day and coaching at night. So I was one of those, coaching at night, kind of trying to supplement the income. Pretty much started right after college, started in California coaching. And then, I had an opportunity to be an associate head coach at a junior college at a young age. So that was a good experience as well, down in Palm Desert. And basically, from coaching, I kind of got into the admin side of things. So, I think that's my niche, is the admin and kind of behind the scenes and making sure kids are able to play. So basically one day we were on vacation. Actually, I was living in Southern California. I was working full-time, coaching at night. And I really felt moved to try something different. So we actually moved back to Maryland, my family, and I started a soccer club in 2013, Ellicott City Soccer Club. I just saw there was an opportunity for people to have maybe another option in the area, kind of where we spent some time playing soccer in, and it was great. We did all basically open tryout. I didn't go and poach players or anything like that. Just basically did grassroots marketing, and about 650 to 700 kids showed up for our open tryouts. We selected 30 teams, and we were off and running. So that's the Ellicott City Soccer Club, going into its 10th year, seasonal year, maybe next year. So we're excited about that because it's had some sustainability in that area. And then also from that, I founded a program called Get on the Bus, which I know we're going to get into in a little bit as well. Trying to identify kids that can't afford or get to training. So I had to solve that in my own hometown in Ellicott City. And so I started a program called Get on the Bus, which we'll talk about. I've done international travel since 2000, taken teams. First team I took was Desert United in 2000 to Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, which was awesome. We've been going almost every year since, except for COVID. So we've done the international travel thing. It's just something else, another opportunity for kids to see the world through soccer. And then also just started consulting. So in about 2018, I was contacted by several different clubs about some of the things we were doing in Ellicott City. And because of those opportunities and things that I was doing, I was offered some positions in terms of consulting jobs for clubs to kind of help them, specializing mostly in sponsorships, how to monetize programming, things like that. So that's been great. And Ballistic, my wife is from Half Moon Bay, California. So she was ready to be back in California. and Ballistic offered, kept giving me more to do in terms of the consulting role. And now I'm the general manager of Ballistic United Soccer Club. We have 5 programs. We have an adult league of about 500 players, co-ed. We have MLS Next. We have a competitive group. We have futsal, and then we have our recreational program. So basically bottom to top, you can play in Pleasanton from 4 to 44 and beyond. And so right now I'm in Pleasanton, California. I'm running that club. So that's a little history, probably a lot more than you wanted, but that's a little background.
No, I love it, because what it does is it makes me feel better about doing so many things, because, you know, you're wearing a lot of hats, and it's great. And you're able to do it, and you're able to have an impact in a lot of different places. And it's super encouraging. I do wish you would have gone up a little higher when you said 44, because now that I'm above that, I feel like it's made me feel even older than I already feel, but that's okay. That's okay. That wasn't intentional. So it's all right. But yeah, you know, it's just one of those things that I loved talking with you the other day about starting the club. And this is something that we talk about in leadership, and we've talked about it throughout the podcast, talking about sweeping the sheds. And one of the things you said in there reminded me of it, when you said, when you were starting that club, you were like literally lining the fields and you were doing everything. And I think in today's day and age, we forget about that work ethic that it takes to make something happen that's worth having. It takes that extra effort from those leading it. Can you just talk a little bit about that, just that role that you have, and just really how you can encourage others that if they're looking to start something, if they're looking to do something, how starting this soccer club really can teach them about really every area of life?
Yeah, well, I want to first say that I have great people that I work with. I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by great people in all those different, I would say, silos or avenues or things that I'm doing. So it's not like I'm doing it all by myself. But when I started Ellicott City Soccer Club, I was doing it all by myself. I actually took my wife's Lincoln Navigator. It was like a 2003. Mind you, this was 2013. And I wrapped it in a wrap, put Ellicott City on there. I had 0 kids, right? So I was the marketing guy, driving up and down Route 40 in Ellicott City, Maryland, stopping at the Starbucks, talking to anybody who would listen, putting out yard signs, doing all the grassroots marketing to try to figure out how to get this thing launched. And I didn't know anything about 501c3s. So I filled out all the 501c3 paperwork myself, you know, and I had a couple people that I trusted to take a look at it before I sent it in, going through that whole process, and then trying to find people that would buy into it, right? Kind of contacting the network of folks that we had. My brother was at another club in Potomac, Maryland at the time. And he's like, hey man, good luck with that, you know, but you're on your own, kind of thing. So yeah, he wasn't even involved when I started the club. He's with us now. Took him a couple years to see that it was going to be fine. But I had a guy, Carmen Giuliano, who was my #1 hire, I call him. You know, he's been great. Has been involved since day one. I met him at the convention, which is coming up. It was actually ironically in Philly when we met, and we sat on the floor and I shared with him my vision, and he was on board from day one. So again, I can't say enough about the people that helped me along the way, you know, behind the scenes as well. But yeah, I mean, I had to buy goals. You know, I had to find out, you know, people were asking where we were going to play. I had to find fields, had to buy goals, had to put them together. You know, I never put a goal together. I put nets on goals. But then, you know, putting the base of the wheel, those quick goals on is something else, let me tell you. And then lining the fields, which was always, I took a lot of pride. We really, you know, took pride in trying to make the fields look professional and things like that. And all the things that go along with that, the hiring of the coaches and the staff and the directors and the marketing and everything behind the scenes. So what I would say to folks that are starting up is that, and it's one thing that I learned through soccer, is that I had to work harder than everybody else. Like I wasn't naturally gifted physically, other than my size, you know, but I had to work harder than everyone else. And I didn't learn that actually until probably in college from my collegiate coach. And we can talk about that too. And we talk about the coaches that have influenced me. But basically, I would encourage everyone to do it, but it takes action. You know, a lot of people talk about the things that they want to do, but they don't act on them. And so for me, it's like, I'm really big into action. Like, how do we get it done? You know, there's going to be hurdles, there's going to be barriers that we have to overcome, but you have to take action even to get to those. And then you just do whatever you need to do to get it done.
Yeah.
So with that mindset, which again, I learned through college soccer from a coach, that helped me, you know, do these things. And then it just kind of, once you're successful, maybe at one venture or one, you know, it gives you confidence to try other things. And my feeling is everything's a risk, you know, so why not jump in with both feet and just see what happens. So that's what basically I did in 2015. I said, I'm going full-time soccer.
Yeah, that was cool. I loved that story, but because, you know, a lot of clubs start and fail and they just peter out. Most small businesses fail after 2 years. And so it's going to be that hard work. It's going to be that extra effort that really is going to make it happen. All right. So, you know, with that, you know, I know that doing all this stuff isn't just on a whim, you know, so I'm assuming you have, you know, kind of a personal why, a life mission that keeps you going. And I just want, what is that? And how are you living it out?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's definitely grounded in my faith as well, you know, but I think servant leadership is important, especially in these times. I think things have kind of changed, right? Like the coaching I was getting and the leadership style back when I was young compared to what it is now, it's changed, it's evolved. So for me, servant leadership is important. So for me, it's opportunities. It's like, soccer's done so much for me and my family. So how can I share those opportunities, like the abroad trips? The reason we went was we just wanted to show them where we've been before. So the reason we went that first time to Scandinavia with that U19 team was just to give them an opportunity to see the world. They hadn't been a lot of those kids hadn't been on a plane in 2000 back then. So for them to be able to go out into the world and use soccer as the vehicle. So that was an opportunity. With the club, it was an opportunity. It was an opportunity for a change. If somebody, if I just felt that there was a need for another organization in that area, and so I wanted to create an opportunity for those kids if they wanted to choose to try something new, that they would have an opportunity. And Get on the Bus is the biggest opportunity, right? Yeah. These are kids that are in underserved communities, and we're servicing them, we're giving them the opportunity to participate, and they would never have the opportunity to participate without the program. So for me, that's my why. When I think about it, it's how do I share with others what soccer's been able to give to me? Yeah. And so that's why I do it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I love that. You know, we'll get into the Get on the Bus and the Ellicott City Club here in a few minutes. But before we dive in, I mean, just to kind of get a little bit more into your story and who you are and what kind of forms you. You know, you mentioned Coach Kinnear being an influence, I think, at the youth stages, and then you mentioned a bit about your coach at UMBC. Like, talk about some of your favorite coaches and what stood out about them to you that you'd say, hey, these are guys that were big influences on me, and why.
Yeah, sure. Well, first I got to start with my dad, right? Because at the time nobody was coaching soccer that really
right
about anything with soccer, unless they were somebody like the Kinnears that maybe had some background. So my dad was a big influence when I was young, talking to me about work ethic, and showing up, I think that, and so that was great. I also had a coach about 12, which kind of ties into Get on the Bus. As the youngest of 5, us going in all different directions, I actually had a coach that picked me up and drove me to practice. And it was about 20-25 minutes. So after he worked a long day, he picked me up on the corner and he took me to practice, right? So that was very influential in my youth. I spent a lot of time with him in the car. We talked about different things. Sometimes we just listened to the music that he had on. But at the end of the day, it was an opportunity that he gave me. If he couldn't pick me up, I wasn't going to that training. Then when I moved to California, Hugh Kinnear, big time motivator, brother Dominic, coached down in Houston and San Jose at the MLS level. Scottish family, great, had some heritage in terms of knowledge and just he would play with us. So that was another example, right? Here's a guy who was just a few years older than I was. I was in high school, he was in his young 20s. And he would jump in and play with us, right? So that was a different kind of leadership style. He would jump in and we learned a lot from him just from that, right? From him jumping in and playing, like 2-touch keep away. I remember, things back then, that were kind of ahead of the time. And then really Barry Bartow, who was at UNLV for a long time, and coached 3 of my brothers. So 4 of us went to UNLV. 3 of them made it through. I transferred. But Barry Bartow was a big influence at UNLV on our family. He was at Philadelphia Textile, took the job in Vegas. My parents had to look on a map to see where Vegas was at the time. I think they thought it was in California. So, but oldest brother Rob went there. He went on to have a career in pro, playing pro. My brother Rich, same thing. And another brother, Ken, who played. I have a sister that also, always got to mention my sister. She played basketball and volleyball at Loyola College in Maryland. So I got to throw that in there. So she's probably the best athlete of all of us. But anyway, then when I transferred from UNLV, and Barry Bartow was great. I went into his office, and I'm sure, Paul, you've had these conversations where I felt like, hey, I needed to, play more, but, quite frankly, I wasn't good enough. So I had to do a self-assessment at that time and say, hey, I have to look at myself. And that was a big learning curve. Of course, I wanted to play at UNLV, but I wasn't good enough. So I had to make a change, and I wasn't fit enough. I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do. But back to the coaches. So then I go to UMBC, and I'll tell you one thing. Coach Pete Caringi has been there. He's a Baltimore legend. He's been there, I think, now 31 years. He coached in the Pro League prior to MLS, and is a great influencer in Baltimore soccer. But when I came in, to UMBC from UNLV that first year, which was his first year, mind you, he's been there now 31 years. He's still there, and making an impact on kids' lives. But when I went in there, I wasn't in shape. I thought it'd be easy. I'd just show up, and everything be fine. He's like, look, if you don't get in shape, you're not going to play here either. So that was when the life lessons really started for me. It's like self-assessment, looking within, not blaming others, things like that, showing up on time. One time I went to go pick up a buddy. We were the starting midfield in my junior year at UMBC. We were late coming back. We didn't play in the game. It was just simple, like very simple, straightforward leadership type of stuff that he taught. But the biggest thing that I think that he taught me, when we talk about influence, coaches influencing lives and things like that, that work ethic, like I talked about, was important. I did get in shape. I was able to play. We won a lot of games together. It was a lot of fun, but I remember those relationships. But the one thing that Caringi taught me was, when you get knocked down, to get back up, right? Which sounds so old school in its way, but really, I look back at times in my life where I had to face a challenge where, it was a big challenge. For example, in June, I was diagnosed with colon cancer, and I had surgery, and it's the hardest knock I've taken, right? In the middle of chemo right now. And basically, his persistence and his leadership on teaching me life skills through soccer have helped me with that. So I can't say enough about Caringi.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, it's I love that. I was just having conversations with, these seniors last night about how that transition might be hard for them. And I'm like, you have no idea. You're going to look back one day and this is going to be the easiest hard thing you've ever done, because I think God puts things in your lives to prepare you for harder things. And I love your testament to that. I mean, obviously be praying for your recovery there through all that you're going through, for sure. But those life lessons from coaches, I just to encourage coaches, it can get frustrating and hard sometimes when you feel like you're beating your head against a wall with a player, like they're never going to get it. But you've just given a testimony to your coaches of like, thank you, right? Like, thanks for pouring in all those times and those lessons, those life lessons that now you're using in your own life, but also passing on to the others that you're now influencing. And just an encouragement to coaches there from what you've said. And I appreciate that, you saying that, for sure.
And I also go ahead, Paul.
I was gonna say, I'm laughing a little bit because you talked earlier about how your coaches were jumping in, and I was flashing back to early in my college coaching days when me and Marcy and our assistant Chuck would jump into the sessions and play with them. And then by the time we got to the end of our career, we're kind of like, I can serve some balls. Anybody want to go? I'll serve a couple balls into the box before my leg wears out. So I was laughing at that.
Yeah, and I was laughing because I think I'm going to need to bring you up to do some counseling sessions with my fifth kid, because he's getting, he's the kid on the corner getting picked up by his coach, and I'm going to show his coach and say, see, you're going to be a guy he's going to be talking about in 30 years because he took him to Stockton recently from Folsom, and I go, how'd that car ride go? He goes, it was great. Justin hopped in the car and he said, hey, coach, I like to talk. And in case he said, yeah, I know that. I know that. I've known you since you were a baby, because he is the fifth kid in that club. And so they talked the entire ride, and it's so to have those coaches as a parent, speaking as a parent, is such a gift to have them that you trust, and with your kid, and B, that they're willing to do it. And he's like, anytime. And, to have that is massive. So coaches, that's something to respect that time and cherish that time that you get to have with those kids, because you're going to have people talking about them like you're talking about your coach there. So super cool.
So before we move on, I want to step into, we're talking a little bit about life and leadership lessons, and you segued really well into that. So I don't even have to ask the question. You've hit it, but you even said a little bit earlier, kind of in your introduction to yourself, you learned that you needed to work harder than everyone else. I want to dive into that a little bit more, because I think it's one of the greatest life lessons that I think as a coach I've seen kind of fading away. We're trying to make the path easier for our players and for our kids than of course we don't want things to be hard, but we're trying to make things so easy that we're losing that lesson of I need to work harder than everyone else. Can you attest to that? Can you dive into that maybe a little bit deeper through the lessons you learned, how you got to the point where, hey, if I'm going to make anything of myself, I've got to work harder than everybody else, and how does that look differently now than maybe it did when we were kids or young adults?
Yeah, I think, now a lot of kids, just show up. They've got the gear, they've got everything that they need. The facilities are immaculate, like you can't blame the grass per se. Baylor's facility is amazing, right? So
yeah,
like it's almost like a sense of entitlement in some ways, right? And I think it's really important that that the coaches continue to press those kids, to try to do more. What I always ask parents when they come in and talk about playing time is like, what is your child doing when they're not with us? Mm-hmm. Right? So like, is he out back with the ball? Like, we've got great facilities here in Pleasanton, California. Sometimes I drive by on a Sunday in the afternoon and no one is on the field. I'm going, if I had those fields and I had access to a goal and there was a net in the goal and a net behind the goal, I'd be out there all day long. We used to have to kick the ball through the goal to go get it, to come back and shoot again. Right. So I would just say that the thing is like, what are they doing when they're not with us, right? And how are we challenging them? And everything is, the whole pickup piece of it too, right? Like in competing maybe against some kids that are a little bit older in a pickup environment, and being able to learn more and seeing more firsthand. Everything's very organized now in comparison. But I mean, I think the work ethic thing and the competitive edge, I just wonder sometimes if it's not something that, obviously you're born with, right? And you can develop, right? But I mean, like, I wanted to win at everything that I did, right? Ping pong, we're playing ping pong, we're shooting free throws, whatever the case may be. I wanted to win at everything that I did. So I was super competitive, probably to a fault, right? Where I got so emotionally attached to winning, that it affected maybe how I played it sometimes until I got a little bit older. But so I would just, a couple things on the work ethic is like, we're not all naturally talented. And believe me, I wish I had, like, I look at like, Ibrahimovic is 6'5", right? He's built a little bit different than I am, right? But I was like, man, if I just had a little piece of those kind of genetics that he has at 6'5", right? But be able to run with pace and stuff like that. So, some things are in your control. And, I was doing like plyometric stuff to try to get quicker and things like that as well, at the college level, but I would just say it's like, what are you doing to get better on your own? And when Kerinji said to me, look, if you don't get fit, if you don't do the work, you're not going to play here either. I was like, whoa, that was a big moment for me, because I was like, I'm not losing any race. Like we used to do full field shuttles. I had no business being in the front of that group, but just mentally it prepared me to be like, I'm not going to lose this run. Like, I'm not going to lose this ball. I'm not going to lose this tackle. I'm not going to lose, is like, I got to work harder than everybody else. I don't have the natural ability that they have. So I don't know if that helps with your question.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, I'm developing programs for, club players that are, wanting to go play collegiately, and just trying to put programs together to help get them where they need to be. And your point, I mean, I hope people go back and listen to this again. I mean, I'm picking up, what are players doing when they're not with us, is what you said. What are they doing when no one's looking? What do they control the controllables? The fitness thing, hey, it's got to be important to you. You're not going to get fit. You're not going to become the best player you can become just in a little bit of time we have together as player coach. You're not going to get to be the best that you can be. You're not going to meet your full potential. It's what are you doing on your own? What are you taking hold of? And I think back to work harder than everyone else. I think that's it. Hey, we can all show up for our hour and a half, 2 hour practices and do the same things. What separates those other players? The ones that are in the backyard, putting the ball against the wall, or going out with a buddy, or going, whatever it is, what extra are they willing to do, separates maybe the average from the great. And I don't even mean like talent wise, but just like meeting potential or exceeding it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing what you can do if you do the work, right? That's the other thing that I learned, right? Like I saw a transformation, and a lot of it was also diet, right? And nutrition and things that, I wasn't thinking about prior. And once I made those changes, and as you know, as a former collegiate coach, those kids are eating a lot, right? They're burning some calories, but there's still things that you can do to enhance your play through your nutrition and your diet as well. So that was a big thing for me at that time as well.
Yeah, there's so much to this. We could go on and on and on with just digging into each of those lessons you talked about earlier, and have talked about in how you're using those lessons and how you've used those lessons in the game. That's why we love talking about it on this show. We have a lot of other stuff we want to get to though, so we are gonna do that. And as you're talking about all these different things, I'm thinking through like each of my kids and how they, all have said at one point, yeah, I want to play at that next level. And then to watch which ones are the ones going out to the park, which one are the ones going out to that, kicking the ball against the wall for hours, the ones that are actually juggling, the ones that are going to the park and doing those things. I have like little, as I've talked about, with a petri dish of case studies going on in my house with all this stuff, as you were a family of 5 kids too. So you get this, and you see the different things, and just, what does that take? And what is it? And Paul and I are not 6'5". We're
just a little,
I don't even know if
less
Paul's 5'5". Are you even 5'5", Paul? I mean,
no.
Yeah.
No,
Okay. Yeah.
I'm 5'4".
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I'm 5'7".
So basketball
7/8.
was, just to put it out there, basketball was not my thing.
Yeah.
Either. So
yeah.
And it wasn't because I couldn't shoot. I couldn't. Yeah. And anyway, move on.
So you could, Muggsy Bogues did make it. So don't use just the height as
Spud Webb,
as
I'm
a
Atlanta
thing.
guy.
Yeah.
Spud Webb was my man.
Yeah.
And Muggsy, Spud. Messi's not tall either. Kind
That's
of to your
true.
point, Tim. I'm like, man, where did I miss the boat with Messi? Oh yeah, I wasn't outside doing technical work 24 hours a day. That's why I didn't get there. So
it's probably just that too. That's probably the only thing separating you from Messi. That's probably
only
it.
Thing.
Yeah.
Only
so,
thing.
But anyway, so we're gonna get to a couple other things I really want to get to, and one of those things is I just want to talk, because you've experienced, you've played at the college level, you went through the youth ranks, you're taking kids around the world, you've started a club, you're now GM of a club, you are doing it on the bus. So what are some things you really like about youth soccer in the United States right now? And, and we'll get into some of the things that I think you'd change, but what are some of those things that you'd change as well about the current state of youth soccer?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was part of the reason Get on the Bus started as well. We didn't qualify for, the World Cup, right? So it's like, how can we not qualify? So I'll dive into that a little bit. But, one thing that is important to me now that wasn't maybe as important, 5-10 years ago was the recreational grassroots side of things, right? It's like that's the majority of the kids that are playing, right? But they get probably the least amount of attention, right? Because it's the competitive, it's the high level players, things like that. I like what I've seen in some of the European countries is like they don't really separate out the kids so early on. So I think even like Holland, was playing just like in his local area with local kids of all levels until a certain age. So for me, some of the things that I think that we could look at is, do we need to separate these kids out at U8, U9, put them in an environment where they're playing for a trophy. And now, the parents are all jazzed up about the fact that they won the trophy, right? And it could be in the second or third division of a tournament, right? So for me, if we could get away a little bit from the emphasis on like that winning at that age, which I know is very difficult here in the States, right? Like, I just think the mentality here is different. And think about that development piece, which is a big part of Ballistic. We're into the development piece, thinking, hey, if we develop these kids, later the winning will come. But I mean, that's the fine balance, right? Like for me, I wish we would just pay a little bit more attention to the grassroots side of things and how we're organizing that right now and how we're getting kids opportunities to play that wouldn't have an opportunity to play because we're pricing the kids out. So those would be some things that I would look at in terms of, what I think we could do better. Things I like, I mean, I went to that MLS Next showcase in Norco, California last year, and it was amazing to see how far we've come. Like to see like pre-MLS 1994 World Cup to where we are now. I mean, it's amazing the evolution in such a relatively short time in the big scheme of things. So I think we're doing a lot of things well there as well. And then it's also great to see players playing at a high level and producing at a high level, playing in Champions League and things like that. So, I won't get in, I'm not going to get into a month away from the World Cup, much about our national team and stuff like that. But I think we have such a big, we have so many people in this country. And if the right kids get the right opportunity, then I think there's unlimited potential for us. So I think it goes back to the grassroots and the rec to identify also kids. So
I thought we were going to get into a World Cup preview show here. So I'm a little, we're not going to, I mean, what, any prediction? Like how far are we going to get? What do you think? You hear to hear first type thing.
Oh man. I mean, I would defer to Paul,
Yeah.
But,
He is the expert. That's what I've been telling everybody.
Pass
Yeah.
the buck. You're
Yeah.
the guest to answer the questions. We're here to ask the
I mean,
questions, Tim. Don't.
I'm hopeful, right, that we get out of the group. I hope these guys show up and we get out of the group. That would be amazing, right? That would be a win, I think, for where we are right now. But, I was looking at some of the stats about a couple of the games that we played recently, and there's some pretty interesting stuff in terms of giveaways, for example.
Right.
Giving the ball away. So that makes me nervous. And if we beat England, that would be amazing, right? So even that would be a small victory within the group if we could somehow beat England and we didn't get out. I would consider that success.
Yeah.
But I think getting out of the group is what we should be focused on.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Just for the record, I agree with you on that, and I think we have probably enough, probably just sheer talent to get out of the group, but do all of those things that need to come together, are we good enough in that way to really battle those other teams that we're going to have to face to get through the group? It's the unknowns, of course, that are going to either rise us up because we, meet our potential, or we kind of miss it because we have too many giveaways or whatever it is, and we don't meet our potential. I think we have the potential to get out of the group. But I think a lot of things really have to happen well on every one of those days to make that happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. Totally. I agree with both of you, which is the smart thing to do at this point, because, you guys are big time, and I'm just kind of the guy asking the questions. So, but anyway, so one of the things too, now we're going to get into the kind of, and I say the meat, I mean, all this has been meat, but the things I'm really excited to talk with you about are some of these really innovative initiatives that are changing the game in a lot of places, and are changing, I hope, our perspective on what's important too about this game as well. And you talked about it, you alluded to it, talking about not only getting people more access to the game, but also getting people who might not otherwise play the game to be able to play the game and learn these lessons that we're talking about, and get these relationships that we've been talking about, and not make it about trophies. And then you talk about the different levels. I mean, I've heard kids say I won state cup, and I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And then it's like the 6th tier of state cup that they won, that, whatever. And you don't even, it loses its meaning. Right. And it also puts the focus on the wrong things. And one of the things that you're doing, we're going to get on the bus, and I trust me, folks, we're going to get to it because I want to talk about it. I know we've talked about it the whole time and haven't gotten there yet, but there's also this special needs program at Ellicott City that you started. And I want to talk about that for a few minutes, because this is near and dear to my heart as well, as far as getting, these are kids that never would, see the field without programs like this, but to be able to teach them. Can you share about that?
Yeah, and I should have mentioned that earlier, but when I started the club, we wanted to service all levels, right, including special needs. So that's actually one of our core philosophies, like soccer people serving soccer families, servicing all levels was important as well, including special needs. My mother was a special ed teacher, and so I was with her for a couple of years, where I went to the school that she taught at. And so that had an impact too. So I really started that program. We started with about 5 kids, and it was on a Friday night. And we did, we basically just threw equipment out. We had some of our older kids mentor those kids, so they were mentors. And that thing has grown. We had 70 kids. And this is not like Top Soccer or like a program that's funded by anything. It's completely free. The program's free to kids of all abilities, like any needs, like and I think that's what kind of separates this program from the Top Soccer, is like, I think there's some limited needs that Top Soccer can't service, and we were like, we'll take whoever wants to show up. So over the years, that thing has grown. The guy Carmen Giuliano, who I spoke about, my employee number 1, really took that by the horns. We get 1 to 2 mentors per child, per special needs player. And I'll tell you, the kids that are participating as the special needs kids, they're getting a lot out of it. But the mentors and the families of the people that are helping those kids are getting more out of it, right? Because it's maybe the first opportunity that they're interacting with a kid with special needs at that level. It's basically 30 to 35 minutes, right? It's inside of a fenced in stadium, like a high school stadium, where the parents aren't allowed in, only the mentors are allowed in, and the kids that are participating. They check in at the gate. We get them a name tag. They check in at the gate. We have a gatekeeper that kind of, lets everybody in and out. And we tell the parents, you want to go get a coffee, go get a coffee. You want to go have dinner, do that, whatever. We'll be here. Again, put the equipment out, and it's just an amazing experience. I mean, I was remiss not to bring it up earlier. I'm glad you brought it up, because I mean, we're just serving, like I said, just up to 70 names that are registering for that program. It's 6 weeks in the fall, 6 weeks in the spring. It's on Fridays. And then you get 140 people there to support it and give up their Friday as mentors. So, I mean, and it's not club based. It's all the clubs. We had a high school group, Howard High School, that came out this last Friday. They did like a Halloween event. They gave every kid a pumpkin, and gave every kid a pumpkin and a bag to go home, and this, that, and the other. But high school the high school teams were coming and being mentors, boys and girls. Other clubs have come. Celtic Soccer Club in Baltimore is a big club. They sent a group of girls down and they participated. The other local clubs, SAC, it's Soccer Association of Columbia and Maryland, and Armor, those are families that live in that community that are given their time on Fridays as well. So that's our special needs program.
There's so much about that I love. I mean, I'm just like thinking about, I'm thinking about how Paul and Warrior Way could incorporate some of that stuff into what they're doing if they haven't already. And, you know, some of these other programs and some of the other clubs in the area. I know a friend of mine does camps and stuff, especially. This is something that it's not rocket science. It's not easy, but it's simple, right? And also you're giving the parents respite, like just to, that's an amazing. I'm loving that, because that's a little bit more than I heard the other day too, even when we were talking. So, Paul, what are your thoughts, man?
It's a really cool thing. I love that we're navigating kind of what direction to go with that. One of our programs is we actually are employing special needs folks to be coaches in our Warrior Way program. So we hire 2 to 4 special needs folks and pay them to be coaches. So it's kind of going the opposite way of bringing special needs people into our world, so to speak. We've got to merge those things together. It shouldn't be, separated, but also giving them an opportunity to make money and provide for themselves. And it's the coolest thing in the world when you hand, one of those young adults a paycheck, and it's one of the first paychecks they've ever gotten, but they're working, they're providing a service to these young people. And it's really cool, but we'll have to catch up at some point, Tim, on a lot of these things, because there's a lot of overlap. But
yeah, 100%.
Feel free anytime. And like I said, my man Carmen will help us as well. He's great.
All right. We've teased it enough. We have
Are we going to talk about Get on the Bus?
I think we're there. I think we're there finally. And there's just too much good stuff. There's too much good stuff with Tim. It's like, it just keeps coming. It's like the goodness is just never ending, it seems. So, but yeah, I do want to talk about Get on the Bus now. Again, you talked a little bit, you've alluded to this throughout, the impetus for starting it and really what it is, how you're impacting lives of youth players using the beautiful game.
Yeah, so I can get through this one pretty quick. I mean, Get on the Bus is near and dear to my heart. We didn't qualify for the World Cup, but also, I wasn't seeing players from different parts of my community in Ellicott City. And so it's a very affluent area, but there are some underserved areas within that community. And so I was wondering why, and come to find out that when I got to a certain area, zip code within the area, there's a trailer park area. I went in, talked to folks, mostly Spanish dual speaking folks, and basically was asking, hey, have you heard about the programs that we're doing, and trying to. So it was really important to me to figure out how to serve that community. Well, come to find out, not only, had they not heard about it, but they couldn't afford it, and they couldn't. Back to a couple different barriers. One, the pay to play model, and 2, the transportation, right? Even my parents couldn't get me to practice. So imagine working, multiple jobs with multiple kids and trying to get everywhere where they need to go. So Get on the Bus was an idea that we piloted. Basically, the idea was, how do we bring these kids from the school, right, a Title I school, into our programming and make it all free? It's from a school. We made teams. We gave them everything that they needed. But it's more than a soccer program. We actually start in the classroom right after school. We teach them a life skill, like drinking more water, putting on sunscreen, moving more. We feed them a healthy snack because for many of these kids, they're hungry right after school, like all of our kids are. And so we feed them a healthy snack. We help them with their homework. Then they change into their uniforms, and then we go and teach them the soccer side. And so basically that's what we piloted. Well, MSYSA, Maryland State Youth Soccer Association, got a hold of that program and found out what we were doing and gave us a grassroots award, their first grassroots award for that program. So that was awesome. US Soccer somehow saw that through social media, US Soccer in Chicago, and said, wow, we have this Innovate to Grow Fund grant. And the Innovate to Grow Fund grant was again, because we didn't qualify for the World Cup, was trying to figure out ways to come up with how we serve underserved communities, how we identify kids, how we get them involved to play. And so this program checked all the boxes for the Innovate to Grow Fund grant. So I applied for Nevada, the state of Nevada, Nevada Youth Soccer Association, in conjunction with them for this grant from US Soccer. And it was basically to serve a Title I school on the campus at UNLV. So my brother was the coach at UNLV, and here was the school. So like, we had it all dialed in. And so we were able to get a 3-year grant for Nevada. Well, that program went so well that we applied for the next year, Innovate to Grow, California and Connecticut. So NorCal and Connecticut. And then most recently, Tennessee and Oregon. So from this small pilot program with my club, we're actually now in 5 states, and we're soon to be in 10 by 2023. Kentucky, Minnesota, Cal South, Washington. So I'm working with state associations on how to implement this program. Seed money is coming from the grants, but we found now that, it needs to be sustainable. So that comes back to, how do we continue to get creative to raise funds for these programs. So essentially that's a little bit about Get on the Bus. It's not just a soccer program. I think it's important to touch base that it's also a program with after school, and we're serving a lot of kids. We've actually, I made a note here. We've been funded or served over 1,200 kids. Our goal is 10,000 kids by the World Cup 2026. And we hope to be in Mexico and Canada because we're hosting together. So we're going to have a chapter in Mexico and a chapter in Canada. And so, the next 4 years, this Get on the Bus program is just going to take off. We've got so much interest. So those are the states we're in for your listeners. And if people want to get involved, in order for us to reach 10,000, we've got some work to do in the next 4 years.
What I love about this is how I feel like this season it wasn't intentional on our part as much as it seems like it was. I wish it was intentional, but I don't think, Paul and I are that smart. Or we plan that much. Maybe we're that smart, but we don't plan that much. But to have start out with Dan Williams and Jorge Vallejo in Atlanta, and talking to Jorge, he has, program with a lot of underserved youth where they can't get to the fields. And so they're trying to figure out, how do we get them there? What do we do? What does it look? And we know that's a common problem. It's both the pay to play system and transportation, because even if they can get scholarship, they can't get there. And, there's only so many coaches that can go around the city to pick up and shuttle, and it's just not going to happen on a regular basis. And so it's such a huge opportunity. So, anyway, you were going to say something.
I was just going to touch base on the bus piece, right? Because I really didn't. So depending on the state, some kids in those schools train right there at the school. And then for Nevada, for example, they train at the school after we go through the after school portion. We bus them on Saturday mornings to the field that's 30 minutes away. So we get a school bus, comes at 8 o'clock, comes at 5 to 8. It leaves at 8 o'clock, right on the button. Again, talk about life skills and life lessons. If you miss the bus, you miss the bus. The kids get on, they're usually there. We had kids there at 6:30 for the 8 o'clock bus the first year, right? That's how anxious they were to get on the bus. But then we bus them to the facility and they play in a recreational league. We've also done it the other way, like in Maryland, where we bus them to our practice facility. They get the training at the practice facility. And so we bus them after school and after the after school part of the program. Obviously, bus drivers are a shortage right now. We're coming out of COVID, and buses as well, trying to contract buses and stuff like that. But we solve the need, whether it's the practice or the games, on getting the kids to the field with the busing. And so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Cause I think there's going to be a lot of questions. And folks, if you have questions, how can is there a website for it? How can people get more information about it?
Yeah, it's GOTB soccer.org. GOTB, get on the bus, GOTB soccer.org.
Okay.
And we need to do some of the updates because our state, our reach is bigger than what's on the website right now. But all the information is there on how to get involved or to donate. We're actively in the middle of a developmental campaign, and it's going great with a group called Cogio. They're a partner of ours. They'll be at the convention presenting as well. And we'll be there as well to kind of tell our story. But, the idea is whether it's the special needs program or something like the Get on the Bus or something that you're doing in Texas, like all this stuff needs funding.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you have to get creative on how to figure out how to solve that problem. And what I feel is going World Cup now and going into the World Cup in 2026 is that a lot of people are going to be wanting to spend their marketing dollars, their foundation dollars, their dollars in the sport of soccer. So I think it's a real opportunity for us as leaders to go find funds to do programming for kids and give them opportunities.
Totally agree with that. Are you working with there's something we haven't talked about yet. I'm curious. Are you working with the parents at all on this? Are the parents able to come? Is there any sort of trainings or anything for parents or just any interaction with them?
Yeah, I mean, we have some volunteers. We vet them the same way. Obviously, everybody goes through background check, working with the kids, either the school or the coaching staff. We do all the safe sport stuff that needs to be done on the coaching side. But some parents have said, "Hey, can we join as coaches?" Yeah, okay. Go through these grassroots courses, and then absolutely, you can participate as a coach, or they volunteer at the school. Maybe they help with the snack or the homework, or in some cases where language is a problem, where they're helping with that piece of it as well. So we do have the parents involved. The other thing that I forgot to say is we also identify kids. So in that first pilot program, there were twin brothers. They did great in the rec program, the grassroots program. We put them on a comp team or a travel team. We paid for them to play, and now they're coaching the kids. So they're freshmen in high school, and they're coaching the kids on Saturdays. So that's how this thing can be sustainable.
Yeah. No, that's so good.
Awesome.
That's so good.
Mm-hmm.
And as usual, we could talk for hours about all the intricacies and details, but we'll leave that to folks. If you want more information, you can get a hold of Tim and you can check out the website. We will have all that on the show notes as well. We'll have that link to get on the bus. To be able to learn more about that, you can go there. And I'm sure Tim would be willing to hop on a call with you if you have any questions. If you want to get it in your area, like Tim said, they're looking to expand. Ideally get into every city in the country. We can, at some point, we can do this, but that will take people. It'll take resources. It'll take everything. But if we do it together, it's a whole lot easier. As I say, many hands makes light work. And so hopefully that's what I think we talk about this on the show so often, the need to include more and more kids, and how can we make that accessible to more? And this is one of those answers to that question. And it's going to take a whole lot more answers in a whole lot more places, but this is one of them. And so how can we get behind it? How can we encourage? How can we collaborate to be able to make it work? And that's my heart. And I love that that we got connected to be able to talk about it. So we got a couple more questions. Paul's going to kind of bring it home here, that we ask all our guests, but I appreciate what you're doing, and I'm excited to see how it continues to grow.
Yeah, Tim, appreciate your time, and really appreciate what you're doing and how you're doing things. And definitely want to continue to catch up, maybe offline on a few things as well. And I hope other people will reach out to you too, because there's some really great things that you guys are doing, and we can all obviously learn from each other, as we're all kind of trying to do some of the same things, right, in our communities, for the right reasons. So I appreciate that. And getting to the questions, that probably the reason people tune into this for these last questions, I'm sure. So it's, finally talked about get on the bus. Now we've teased out the final questions. But what have you learned directly from the game that you've used in your marriage and parenting? So what are some, we talked about life lessons from the game that you use in your life, but how do they directly affect, like, maybe some things you've done as a parent or in your marriage?
Well, I would say from a parenting perspective, right, I try to instill some of those same things in my kids. I have a daughter and a son. I'm actually a grandfather as well. But, when I think about the parenting piece, like, I feel like you almost need to let them fail. So like my experience that I talked about, going from one university to another, to me and to some could be a failure, but it was the best thing that happened to me. Right? Because I learned so much from that experience. If I just stayed and just got by, I could have done that. But so from a parent perspective and parenting, I would say is, I really try to let my kids figure it out, right? Rather than kind of steer them in a direction, and I think that's the new model in coaching. Although I haven't been, brought up to my, my coaching courses, but it's kind of letting the kids figure it out on the field, right? And asking them kind of questions to engage them in the decision making that they're having. So for me, in the parenting realm, I would say that's something that I've used. They're grown now. My son's 23. Very proud of him. He's at Georgetown doing grad school, and I have a daughter who's married with grandbaby in Virginia. I get to see them next week. But yeah, I basically said, hey, you guys got to figure this out. Like, I'll help you. When you need help, I'll be there. If you want my opinion, I'll let you know. But I pretty much let them make the decisions, and then face the consequences of their decisions, right? Hey, you made this decision, and now you got to deal with the consequences of your decision. And I think that I feel like that has helped them prepare them for life.
I think that's huge, Tim. I'm a huge fan of allowing kids to fail in a safe environment. You challenge them, let them make decisions in an area where they're safe, and they can fail in a safe environment. They got somebody to pick them up, so that when they have to make decisions and face challenges where there's not someone there to pick them up, they failed before, and it's not their first time having failed. So I love that. What a great value that you've provided for your kids. And I hope that's a great takeaway for me, for sure, but for our listeners as well. And as we kind of wrap up these questions, what have you read, watched, or listened to that's informed your thinking on how soccer explains life and leadership? It's a great way to share resources to our, well, selfishly to me and Phil, but to our listening community too.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some good people that came to Ellicott City and spoke. One, John O'Sullivan, Changing the Game Project. I think he's got a lot of good stuff that I've been through. He was great. I met him. He came early on, and what he's doing, he's making some changes. Obviously, the Sideline Project, I think, is important to also talk about. Sky Eddie is talks about parental behavior in the Sideline Project, and you can get a certificate now on how to be a parent on the sideline, which I think everybody should probably do. And get that 15-minute.
It's great that that's out there, but it's sad that we have to do that.
Yeah. And it's her life work. I mean, she put a lot of time into it, and
she's great.
And, I mean, we talk about the referees and a shortage and things like that. In terms of leadership, obviously the servant leadership stuff is important to me. So, like, leaders eat last. and some of the stuff that he has, Simon has, about leadership, is really about taking care of the people that are in our care, kind of like, how do I serve those others that we're in charge of? But those are some things and some takeaways that, that are some soccer and some not soccer, that I'm kind of have been into and rely on. And then obviously I try to get in my coach's Bible every day. That's through FCA. I think that's an important piece as well, as in terms of trying to draw wisdom on a daily from that.
That's awesome. Big shout out to our FCA representatives across the country.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I just, actually Sean Smithson with FCA is who connected us. Great guy. We're actually going to get him on the show here pretty soon. Excited about that. Actually was just at my men's group this morning with a man who's FCA as well. Very excited to see how much FCA is doing in a lot of these, actually accessibility as well. We talk about that. FCA is creating some clubs and different teams and leagues and stuff, which is really cool, just to get more people to be able to use this game. And again, those life lessons we can teach and the different things we can teach through it. So love that. Actually, Leaders Eat Last. Love that book. Simon Sinek has a lot of good stuff, but I actually used that last night yesterday talking to some coaches about the serotonin idea that they talk about in that book, where what we don't understand about the serotonin, the feel-good chemical, is not only do you get it when you encourage someone, you get it when you are encouraged, but you get it when you watch somebody else being encouraged. And so as coaches, how are we encouraging people to share the encouragement and to see it and do that as a team, so that we can actually, that's a massive part of the team culture that I think we miss a lot of the time. So anyway, great book. Love that book. And those other things that you're talking about in there. So some really good, really good stuff. I actually just looked on the Changing the Game project the other day. So encourage you folks, check out those resources if you haven't already. Thanks again, Tim. Just thank you for who you are, what you're doing. Thanks for being part of the conversation, part of this show, and for taking the time to do this with us today.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. It's great to be able to share, my story. And so thanks for the platform, and thanks for, like I said earlier, the content for folks to be able to hear what other people are doing. Because I like I said, I listened to a couple of the shows already and have learned a few things as well. That Upper 90 is an interesting podcast. So, but thank you for the opportunity. And anybody can contact me at any time, and I'd be happy to meet with them in a Zoom or at the convention in Philly.
Yeah, fantastic. And folks, on that note, convention is coming up in Philly. It's January 11th through the 15th. Hopefully you're able to make it. If this is a soccer podcast, if this podcast that you have been listening to is something that you do enjoy and you're learning a lot from it, I guarantee that the convention in Philly will be a place that you will not only be able to learn, but be able to connect with a lot of people who are like-minded and really want to understand how we can do more through this game. And so I'll be there. And been excited. I'm going to present on how we can retain our players using DISC. Again, if you want more information about that, you can go to the show notes. If you want more information about Warrior Way, coaching the bigger game program that I have with Christian DeVries, and anything we talked about on the show today, get on the bus, the different things that Tim's doing, you can find all that in the show notes. I encourage you to go there. Mostly, as we always talk about on the show, I encourage you, I hope that everything that you're learning from this show, you're using it to help you be a better leader, to help you be a better parent, a better spouse, a better coach, better in every relationship that you have. And you're continually reminding yourself that soccer does explain life and leadership. Thanks a lot. Have a great couple weeks.
Thanks, guys.